Good evening and welcome to the Paranormal Lens. My name is Chad Thomas. My co-host Jamie Widener, and we're here and we've got a great show tonight. But before we get there, how was your week, Jamie? Anything exciting?
Blurry. It's like, how is it Tuesday already? Things just kind of go, and here we are again. So it's exciting, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nothing too traumatizing or monstrous happened.
Well,
I did get to do something I meant to do for like 7 months now. A Sunday afternoon, I got to put legs on a table I was building in the basement. So like a work table.
I remember seeing that table.
You've seen that, right? Exactly. So it's there now. The legs are on. Now I realized the casters, I need washers to put those on, and it's a mess now. But at least the legs are on all two tables, and
okay,
it's getting better.
Okay,
well, sort of.
That's good.
It's still not done though. Dang
it! It's never done, Jamie. That's never done.
That's a fair point. What about you? What's going on?
Not work. Kids' schedules, it's the show's coming up that the kids are in, and so that's what life's about right now, rehearsals and stuff like that. But it's good; they're excited. So yeah.
I just had kids arrive, so I'm sure there's some flutter of either they're really tired because they've been at school since 7:20 this morning, or they're hyped up and they'll be up till midnight.
All right. So. Speaking of hyped up, I'm hyped up about our guest.
I am too.
Tony Rathman is our guest tonight. He's waiting in the green room. I got a little bit of an intro to read and then a video, and then we will bring him in. Like I said, our guest tonight's Tony Rathman. Tony and his wife Cherie are based out of Phoenix, Arizona. Tony is the founder and lead investigator at Entity Voices Paranormal. He has investigated hundreds of locations across the country, as well as in Japan and the Philippines. Tony was a skeptic until Cherie asked him to try paranormal investigation. The evidence they captured on their first attempt led him down the path of constant paranormal research. Tony developed the silent EVOX and Evox 2 spirit boxes, but set that aside when he teamed up with Ron Iacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez and started working on what they were doing, which was based on the research of Marcello Bacci. The team continues to evolve and refine the DRV technique for longer, cleaner, and more understandable communication with spirit. After removing the radio from the process, the DRV name didn't fit anymore, so Tony coined the name Staticom, which now has developed into Staticom 2. Tony is the creator, producer, and co-host of the multi-year running Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence podcast show on the UNX network. Tony and his wife Cherie were former operators and host investigators for the old Phelps Dodge Hospital in Ajo, Arizona. And that was known as the Copper Canyon Paranormal Research Center. And they allowed people from around the country to investigate overnight. So I'm going to play a video clip and let Tony introduce himself and get into the Phelps Dodge Hospital a little bit. So here we go.
I'm Tony Rathman, founder of Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations in Phoenix, Arizona. And this is my wife and co-founder, Cherie.
We've been successfully researching paranormal activities across the United States, including haunted hotels, historic locations, and conducting private homes investigations.
There's a whole nother side of life, the afterlife, that we want to know about. We crawled into our tents, screen tents, to keep the bugs off of us, and tried to fall asleep. The hospital woke up when we lied down. Noises came from every direction. Doors slamming, footsteps, voices. You will clearly see that we are all asleep and in front of the camera. Therefore, there's no way it is us making the noises you're hearing. Hope you enjoy.
Tony, welcome.
Hey,
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
that's a cool entrance. We should do this for everybody, right?
Hey, Tony put it together. I mean,
That's true.
so
So, wow. I gotta say this first. You know, that's pretty compelling and rather interesting.
It was, and we were shocked when so let me explain how that occurred. We had been investigating a couple times a week, either on our own or with tour groups or other investigators that had paid to. We let them spend the whole night, so they'd literally get from like 7 p.m. to 7 in the morning. And the hospital was roughly about 39,000 square feet. So, I mean, it wasn't really, really big, but big enough to handle even a group of 10 investigators, and you wouldn't be running into each other. But out of the hundreds of times that we investigated ourselves, along with some friends of ours, Chris Allgood and Audra Keeler, we would always see shadow figures. And we caught a couple on photograph. We caught a couple peeking around corners or darting out of the hall, but nothing like this. And the funny part is that particular night, Cherie said, let's investigate as long as we can. And I think we investigated to about 3 in the morning. And then we set up these little screen tents to keep bugs off of us, because there's some bugs in Arizona you don't want crawling on you at night. Scorpions, tarantulas, all sorts of other stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, we had put up multiple DVD or DVR cameras throughout the hospital, and we ran them into a recorder. We also had a FLIR recording constantly hooked up as well to the DRV recorder. The FLIR showed absolutely nothing. Yet this shadow figure, which looks three-dimensional because it comes out of the building or the door in the back. There's a room that it came out of, and there's another room on this side, which you can see him cross through. But when it comes out, this was like, I don't remember the time, 5 something in the morning, or just 5 or 5 to 5 or something like that. So the light you are seeing is coming through a big window in the operating room. And that's the back side of the hospital, or the east side. So the sun had just poked up. Whereas if you look at the clip where we're on camera, it's still dark because we're in a different section of the hospital. But the other point is that that was being recorded on the second floor. So that window that's letting that light through is about 20 feet in the air. So even if somebody had walked by, unless they were on 17-foot stilts, could not cast a shadow of a figure into the hallway. Plus, you can see it come out. It literally almost turns 360, walks towards the camera into the darkest part of the hallway where light's not shining through the door. And that's not possible. That shouldn't be able to occur, but it did.
Todd's got a question here. Todd and Carmela have a question here. Did the shadow figure go into the room where you and Cherie were sleeping or not?
No, well, not that we're aware of. It never showed up on the DRV camera, so no, it didn't. So. But the funny part was we found out a day or two after that the building had been sold. We would not be able to return. So Cherie said to me, it's almost like after 4 years of doing this, seeing them, this was their attempt to say, show us and say goodbye. So I thought that was kind of cool. Whether that's accurate or not, I don't know, but it's an awesome capture.
Pretty cool. I've enhanced this a little bit. I've played with the contrast and stuff a little bit. So let me run that, and I'm going to keep the volume down so we can talk through it a little bit. But I'm just going to run that while we're
Wow, that made it. I mean, that makes them even clearer.
Mm-hmm. It looks to me like like the first one's a doctor who's gone in and sort of checked on something, left the room, and then like two other people have snuck out of the room and down or across the hall.
It
that's
does
my
look like that.
but
It looks like some sort of long lab coat, or I don't know, or maybe there were utility people that were fixing something. I don't know, but I agree, it does look like that.
Yeah. Jamie, you're the one who likes. What are your thoughts here?
I'm going to spin this a slightly different direction. So, in the spirit of your comment that knowing you're not coming back, and giving you that, for lack of a better term, last hurrah of
Right.
contact. The first piece of the clip, and I'm saying this slightly jokingly, but this is what I saw. It looks like someone's dancing. It's kind of like a movement, like a
Maybe
like,
their
look
shift
at me.
was done.
And yeah, it's the first thing I thought. The first time I saw it, the second time with the enhancement, it's even more to me. And obviously, that may not be the case if somebody just just doing some general motion, but it's almost rhythmic to a sense.
Right.
The first piece.
Great
And,
observation.
I can see certainly, that Chad's point of a doctor, checking out of the room, and then perhaps there's the nurse that's in there still doing whatever the task is, and the patient even leaving, depending on the type of environment that they're at. I think of a doctor's office, and I know hospitals don't necessarily have that, but it's really interesting.
That's a great point, and just a fantastic observation. We ran parabolic mics throughout the hospital as well, and the sounds, the banging, the footsteps. I mean, we heard the elevator come up and open. The elevators haven't run since 1985, but yet all those noises on the recordings are there.
Mm-hmm.
It was a fascinating place. We do miss it. We really do.
It's a shame the story that you tell about it, but so just the basic the background. I think it was built in about 1915.
1919 I think was the actual year it was opened,
and then it ran through 1985 under a couple of different management regimes, but
correct,
through 1985, and then it was basically shut down. And my understanding is everything was left there.
There was a ton of stuff there. I mean, there were even, obviously HIPAA didn't exist then, because we literally found file cabinets that had just full of patient records, medications that they were on, and so it was a wild place.
I did a bit of math to kind of get a feel for the area. And we talked about this before we got on, but I lived in Phoenix as well. I've passed by the area heading out 8, going over to California, like San Diego. That's the shortcut, right? You don't go across 10.
Right.
But so I've been near, but I've never been, but I know the area at least that way. And, a hospital like this wouldn't have just been for the town, because it's not big enough. There's like 3,000 people there now, 3,300 or so.
Correct.
So, but in its heyday, when the mines were running and there was the town was flush. What's the thought for how many people would have been served here in the town, but also just in the region, with all the activity going on?
I'm sure that the hospital did. Well, I shouldn't say. I'm sure that the hospital was literally built and serviced the miners and their families.
Okay.
So
exclusive to the community there. Okay.
Yeah. So that whole community, though, at that time worked the mine. That was the main job. That was the main source of income.
And that was a copper mine, correct?
It was a copper mine, correct. It's 1,100 feet deep, and it was an open pit mine.
Okay.
Oh, there were lots of people with jackhammers and stuff, and axes and sledgehammers that fell from ledges they were on, and and then you had all. I mean, there's the history. I don't want to go into it all because we'll use up the whole show, but it was basically there to service anyone that was working for the mine and fix injuries, hopefully save lives. And the way the town was laid out, the grocery stores that were there were physically brought in by the mining company, stocked, and that's where they could buy their food. And basically their entire life revolved around working in the mine and what was provided to them to give them a life. So
it was a true company town, like the whole,
Absolutely it was. And when the mine shut down, so did the town. I mean, it literally did. There's not much. There are people there. They kind of tried to make it into a retirement town, but when the hospital left, they don't have a hospital. They have a clinic, I think. Yeah, they have one small clinic, but not even a big doctor's office, and you've got retirees living there. So it's like,
Yeah. So, well, you'd mentioned earlier about some parabolic mics that you've set up. You gave us another set of clips that is a montage of different sounds that you've picked up, is how I interpreted it. Does that sound right?
That absolutely does sound right. It was just noises. It is a collage. So these are not happening back to back. We took a video of us sleeping and then just layered the audio on it. So don't think these are all occurring, in this quick of a manner, because they're not, but that's exactly what it is. Just so you can get an idea of all these noises that are occurring in a building that is locked. My wife and I, our youngest son is with us too. He's in the screen tent behind us, but no one else is in the building. All the doors are locked. We're the only ones with keys. No one else is allowed or even has access to get in, yet all these noises are occurring throughout the night.
Okay. So I'm going to play this, and you can talk and explain if you want to while we're doing it. So here we go.
Okay, this isn't from when we were sleeping. This is actual EVPs we caught.
Oh, did you hear that?
I did. There's a woman in here. Mary, are you in here again? And this is a bathroom. There is a male talking. I can hear it. Are you in here?
Fucking hear that?
Yeah. What the heck was that? What the
Fuck was that?
What the heck was that?
You heard that too.
Oh, absolutely.
That was in here.
It was-
That wasn't outside.
Who's in here? Hello? Oh my God, Chris, did you hear that?
That wasn't you.
No.
Something's in here.
I know something's in here.
I mean, that literally was just a promotional clip. We played those to entice people to come and investigate it. I have literally terabytes of captures from that location.
Were those EVPs, or it sounds like some of them were actually like disembodied voices because you were hearing them at the same time.
The high was absolutely disembodied voice and made me jump back. And then I'm like, oh my, Chris, did you hear that? And he goes, that wasn't you. So he heard it too. Absolutely. So yeah, that wasn't just EVP. That was disembodied voice.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Jamie, you're muted.
And as it goes, then with the window of time, how long again have you had the opportunity to investigate there or utilize the space?
2017 to September of 2021.
Okay, that's a good window. Okay.
Yeah. And we were down there all the time. If a weekend showed up and we had no plans, it was only about 2 hours away, so it wasn't too bad. Right. But we'd jump in the car and And it didn't matter whether it was daytime, nighttime, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The activity was there. It was always there.
Yeah,
And
that's a really thank you for saying that, because that's a common misconception that we can only investigate at night.
right.
You know, and obviously a lot of our equipment, you know, with night vision and IR and everything is aimed for nighttime, and you know, things are calmer. And people
Correct.
ask this question. You know, we host public events at our location at Booby's Brewery here in Mount Joy, PA. You know, all the time, and people ask that why do we do this at night? And you know, less people, less activity. Although it's connected, you know, it's a brewery, so it's connected to a bar that has people rolling out at 2 a.m. You know, in traffic at a street level. That it's, you know, it's a fairly, not a busy street, but it's enough.
Right.
And, you know, so even those things, you know, I quantify that in some of the spaces where we have windows that'll have, you know, light pollution because of a car. There's a train track nearby. Yeah, then people hit it at the right speed. You get that gunk, you know, going
Right.
over it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so those are things that automatically get thrown out. You know, but if we were there in the daytime, and you know, it's something we've done already. We've done investigations in the daytime. You know, there's just as much activity happening. The things that we'll capture. It's just you have to be a little more careful. You know, the hospital being vacated, and you know, I did a Google Earth on it, and you know, it's kind of up there on the edge of town, kind of thing. So I can't imagine there's a whole lot of traffic out there.
No, very, very little. There's
Kinda
a
has
house
nothing to-
sitting
to
below
to
it, and then the old doctor's house, nursing home. They're not those anymore. Those places were sold, but those were the buildings next to it. And now, so you're literally talking, you've got maybe 2 neighbors within 300 yards, and then you've got one maybe 100 yards down below, but that's it. Nope, that road's not traveled much.
Yeah, and so you're not getting that pollution. You could
No.
trust your evidence at any time of the day.
Correct.
And, you know, you mentioned, you know, it's dark as night in the daytime because you're isolated inside the building without power. So, you know, those clips, you know, we always assume it's nighttime.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And that's a
No,
cool thing
no,
as an
plus-
investigator to get out.
Plus, we had blacked out a lot of the windows in certain rooms to keep areas of the hospital, because we would do tours during the day. We would let people come in and just either tour it, because they always said, "Oh, you know, my mother was born here, or my father, can we?" So
Right.
we would allow that, but we'd have people that would come in and do investigations sometimes when the sun was still up. So we'd block out hallways so it stayed dark, just to add that additional atmosphere when investigating.
Mm-hmm. So
Cool. I like it. That's an amazing location to be able to do that in.
yeah.
It was. It definitely was.
And you know, as we've alluded to, it's no longer an available location for you.
No,
which is a shame. You told us the story a little bit earlier off air, and it's like, it's quite a shame. But that's how some of these things go.
Yeah.
There was a location that our team used to do that they decided to renovate and turn into a wedding venue, so they didn't want the paranormal tied to it anymore.
Just for the record, the paranormal paid for the renovations, though. So
Exactly. But
go figure.
so
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
a shame how we lose some of these, and I think it's important. Like the historic value of that set of buildings itself is just, it's a shame to lose that. And
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You know, well, I have to imagine the weather, you know, is not a helper, you know, in dealing with, you know, the upkeep and maintenance of this property being idle. You know, it's just constantly being warned against by the high desert weather.
Correct. Yeah.
Given.
And just unbelievable heat in the summer. And, you know, that pretty much took most of or a good portion of the roof and damaged it. And then during monsoon season, then it would get pelted with water, you know, and then the sun would fry it for a couple more days after that, and things would crack. And so, yeah, it is a shame, because it's a beautiful building. It really is.
So how did you go from that exciting episode or part of your life to the next exciting part of your life with Staticom? Like, I mean, you've been involved in 2 pretty amazing things here. So how did you get from one to the other?
Well, when my wife and my wife got me into the paranormal, I was never, you guys going to make Tony like a baby. It took a month. Yeah, it was a shame when we lost the hospital. It really was. It was. And then, we'd go very often, but when we couldn't go anymore and the keys we had to turn them over because new owners, we wanted to go twice as bad. But anyway, my wife got me into the paranormal. I didn't really think about it, and this was 14 years ago. But all of the television shows started to hit the airways, and she'd always say to me, "Come on, you got to watch this. This is great." I could last about 2 minutes, and I said, "No, none of this is real. It's television. This is entertainment." I didn't believe any of it. Plus, growing up, my father was a physical science, and chemistry instructor. So, if I said, "Dad, why is the sky blue?" I got a scientific answer. There's moisture in the air, and when the sunlight hits it, it separates colors. Blue is the most common color. Therefore, the sky looks blue. So there was no conversations about entities, spirits, ghosts. But every Valentine's Day, we'd take the weekend, go to a hotel, hang out, hang by the pool, drink. And she says, "I want to do something different this year." I said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" She goes, "I want to go ghost hunting." And I was like, "Oh, you're kidding me." Well, I had two choices. I could take her or have her mad at me until next Valentine's Day. So I took her.
You made the right choice.
Yes,
I know I did. But when we got back, we spent the entire weekend there. I played along. I walked around the whole establishment with her. I asked questions with her, and she was happy. So that was all I cared about. But when we got the stuff home, the video, the photographs, the recordings, I was blown away. She kept calling me over. "What's in this photograph? That wasn't there when you took it. What is that?" The audio recorder. "Who's answering our question? We were in the basement. There was no one there to." So I spent about a month or two trying to debunk it. Couldn't. Finally said to her, "Let's go back. Maybe there was weird lighting. Maybe there was a vent pulling sound in." No, none of that was there. But we caught more. We went back again, caught more. That's how it all started. And it just expanded from there. I think we investigated that hotel, though, over 50 times. And then not all in a row, but
Right.
And then we branched out all through Arizona, every haunted location we could get our hands on or get permission to get into. Then Nevada, then California, then New Mexico, then all over the country. And then eventually Japan and the Philippines as well. So that's how we got into the paranormal. Like I said, that was 2010. So what fascinated me about the paranormal was EVPs. Where was this voice coming from? How was it getting onto the machine? How were they able to hear me speak? How are they able to respond with a message that has both timing and relevance to what I asked? So we did that. Well, we're still doing that today. But that dragged me into ITC, spirit boxes. And I was fascinated with them because the whole purpose of ITC is two-way communication, not just singular record and review, do an EVP. This allows you to ask a question, get a response, and then follow it up with a secondary question to get more information. So then I had worked in electronic shops when I was younger, TV repair, radio repair. So I took a spirit box apart and said, "Okay, what's in here? What's this made up of? How's it function?" And then for the next 12 years, I built spirit boxes. I think we have 14 of them laying on the shelf over here, but I haven't touched one in 2 years. Why don't I touch them anymore? Not because they don't work, they do. But when Ron and Lourdes showed us what they were calling direct radio voice, which is literally a method they brought back that was used 1959 by Frederick Jurgensen and then Marcello Bacci, Dr. Annabelle Cardoso. They all experimented with it. And he said, the voices that are coming from direct radio voice far outweigh anything that's coming from a spirit box. Why is nobody doing this? So they literally brought it back. They sat for a year and a half, literally just in front of a 1980s boombox with white noise coming out of it, asking questions. And they did that religiously until answers finally started to show up. And then they added some computer filtering to the white noise. And that's when we saw it. And the first response I heard them get wasn't spirit box like a word or two were garbled. And he asked some question about one of the people that were investigating with us. And the response was, bring April to the basement. And I'm like, oh my, I was blown away.
Mm-hmm.
So then what we did was we joined forces, my wife and I and Ron and Lourdes, and we I don't want to say manipulated. We expanded direct radio voice into what we now call Staticom. The main changes were we removed the radio. The problem was anybody skeptic or scientific or academia based would say you're getting stray radio waves. It's not that hard to figure out. There's nothing paranormal against it. So what we wanted to do was get rid of that low hanging fruit. And Rod and Lourdes did a test in a zinc mine where radio waves didn't come through. They were able to still get voices. I was doing a presentation where I actually had a sleep machine in my bag, plugged it in, turned it to white noise, and asked a question. I got a response, which I was amazed at. But it actually imprinted onto the chip in the white noise. So it looped every 3 seconds. It wasn't live white noise. It was recorded. So every 3 seconds, their answer would repeat. But I'm like, hey, if it can use that, let's try a white noise generator. And that's what we use today. So it's a closed circuit system. White noise is 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Every sound the human ear can hear at a constant level, meaning not one is higher than the other. That's why you don't hear any of them. You just hear that shh sound. And no audio data, no syllables, no words, let alone no sentences. But yet we filter it then, and we believe through stochastic resonance, when the spirits lay their voice onto the white noise, it elevates the sound of their white noise because you've got that broadband white noise underneath it. It's kind of like if a bee was buzzing next to your head, a foot from your head, versus a whole hive of bees buzzing. That sound gets elevated, and that's what we believe occurs. And then we use a software program called VST, which is virtual studio technology. It's like an audio studio for the computer. And then we cut everything out below that voice, and then we only get the voice.
Wow, that's the most technical description I've heard of it. So I'm processing it. So thank you. I'm going
to ask Chad what you said later, because that's somewhere over here. Right.
Yeah, I have a background in theater, so I've done a lot of audio engineering. I installed sound systems for a while, so I'm very familiar with white noise, pink noise, all those. So I'm just thinking about all the systems that I installed, and we used pink noise to tune it. What I could have been hearing if I had only known to listen. So.
Well, exactly. You know what? And the medical community, scientific community says, hey, if you turn a fan on and you're hearing voices, or music, you're either suffering from musical ear syndrome or, split personality. But the fact of the matter is, based on how Staticom works, I mean, we ran tests before we switched to the white noise generator of running water, fans. I had literally taped mics onto the side of the car when I was driving around town for the wind noise.
Mm-hmm.
They all produce voices, but the problem is that the consistency of it was never even. If a car passed you, the wind noise would get louder, and it made it really hard to pull the voices out. But were they there? They were.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So Todd has a question here. Do you find the weather in Arizona caused activity during investigations to be increased level, hot, dry air conditions? And did you find that they have any effect when you run Staticom sessions?
We don't notice any difference in Staticom sessions. That's the consistency of Staticom, and which makes it just so wonderful, is that no matter where we are, we don't even have to be at 100 locations, because we don't consider vocal response. A vocal response will not prove a location is haunted or has activity, because we can get them anywhere. What we did notice here in Arizona, though, is that if there was a storm, if lightning was present, that would definitely charge the atmosphere and increase activity, but not necessarily with Staticom.
A lot to think about. I'm going to throw up the first clip I have here is really a short one. It's and Tony Rathman can see.
Okay.
So let me it's a quick 3-second clip. So let me play that, and then you can fill us in on it.
So you can hear the clarity. There is no audio data. There's no word banks. There's no nothing. That voice shouldn't be there. Now, timing and relevance. When this was a place called the Montgomery House in North Carolina, and our entire Entity Voices team was there. Myself, Cherie, Ron Lourdes, and Chris and Audra. And we had just gotten in there. We're all standing there setting up our equipment, cameras, and I'm looking up. There was a stairway that went up, then a little landing, and then it went up again. And I saw something move. So I'm staring at it, and all of a sudden, Chris, whose message was just up there, he goes, "What do you see?" I said, "There's a girl standing on the steps." He goes, "You can see her?" And I said, "Yeah." And then later, we went outside, and I saw her poke her head through the window, looking out. And that never happens to me. I don't see stuff like that. When we turned Staticom on, that vocal you just played came through.
Yeah, and I'll play it again. Yeah.
Yeah, and they used my first and last name.
That's pretty cool.
So
like you said, timing and relevance.
Right.
So when you do a session, we go around. I'll speak for myself and our team. We go around and we introduce ourselves before we start like an EVP session, but we never give full names. Would you have done that? Shared your full name?
I've done it before, but not at that location.
Okay,
but
that's what I suspected. Okay,
but it only takes. We noticed this probably 3 years into investigating, that once we gave our name, we could go to locations we had never been to before, and they would call us by name. So, wow. Is that a universal consciousness? Maybe, but information flowed through, and we'd walk in the locations we had never investigated. Oh, the Rathmans are here. How that works, I don't have the answers, but it does happen.
Wow. I have another one. I think it's called No Cops. Is this from the same location?
It is. So before you play this one, we were asking questions. Lourdes actually asked, "What's your favorite part of this house?" Now, this house was on something like 1,000 acres, middle of nowhere. So, I mean, even somebody coming from town, it would probably take them 3/4 of a day to get to it. But we were thinking they were going to say the library or the study, but this is the answer they gave.
All right.
What's your favorite part of this house? What room?
Which again, timing and relevance made perfect sense. And everything I said about where the house was, how far away it was. Yeah, there wouldn't have been cops and would have had safety for the children to play without fear of anything except maybe animals, but that would have been it.
Now, you said this is the Montgomery House, right? This is the one that Chris and Audra still
correct
get to a lot.
Still run. Yep.
Okay. They run this one. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very cool. Jamie, you've got that look on your face.
I'm good. I'm good. It just, we did an episode on ITC, which for me was a very good thing to start with. And then, it led us to have Ron Lourdes on. and my mind was blown. But now but I've kind of become, I'm starting to absorb this more, and out of like just sheer wow factor, and I guess I want to ask you this: when did the wow factor end, or has it ended yet for what you're capturing all the time? Or you're just kind of just rolling with it now because it's happening so frequency and in such clarity.
The wow factor never ends.
Okay.
The other point is we do not know the limits of Staticom. We don't know where it's eventually just gonna not be able to produce farther than where we're at today. And because we don't know the limits, are the limits just to spirits? Can we speak to extraterrestrials? Can we speak to multidimensional creatures? We don't know. Because all of those variables are still up in the air. I mean, there's a lifetime of research with what Staticom is showing us now and what we can test. Just the other day, I was having a conversation with somebody and they said, hey, have you ever asked how the pyramids were built? Have you ever asked if Atlantis exists? I mean, there are literally millions of questions that can be asked. Have we ever asked any of those too? No, we haven't. Why? Because it's so overwhelming that, you can't do everything. We have to pick apart things the other question we always get is, well, how do I buy this? Is it for sale? Well, this was done for research purposes only. And even the 12 years of Spirit Box building, I never sold one because that wasn't my point. It wasn't for production. It wasn't for resale. It was for the research. And same with Staticom. And if we even were to put it out there, the research would stop because all the free time would go into answering people's questions. And so right now people ask us that all the time, but we don't have an answer yet.
It's a different kind of business at that point. The business
Correct.
now is the research, and then it would be the retail. Yeah, I totally appreciate that.
Yeah. Customer support takes so much energy, right, Jamie?
Yeah. Hold on. This is appropriate though.
Sure. Yeah. We did ask that question, winning lottery numbers, but guess what? We knew this partially from just building spirit boxes, but there is what we call universal laws. And it basically says that we are here on this planet in a 3D body meant to learn, grow, evolve the spirit or the consciousness, whatever you want to call it. And those universal laws limit them from giving you information that's going to interrupt this experience that you're here for. And apparently the lotteries, because of, a massive amount of money all of a sudden would probably change everything about you, including your outlook and what you cared about. But when she said it about the lottery numbers, they just go quiet, that you will not get. But we can ask any other number. How many spirits are here? They'll tell us.
Which is a good segue. Let me play another clip.
I know which one this is.
I think you know what's coming up. So I'm just going to play it and you can tell us about it afterwards.
Sure.
How many spirits are with us right now?
300.
300? Did you say 300?
I love that retort. Is that the wrong answer?
And the other thing about it is you can hear the accent in there. Mm-hmm. You can hear the tonality of the speech. You can hear the emotion attached to it. We had some of our clips analyzed by audio engineers, and their response was, this is as close to human speech as we've ever heard, because it elicits all of those functions of which human speech has, but coming from a broadband white noise, which has nothing in it at all that could create that.
Wow.
I find it interesting too that like it's like you were picking up on somebody else's conversation, and she passed go. And I know that when you would do some live sessions, it seemed like there were times where we were listening in on people's conversations.
Without a doubt. One of the first comments when we were doing DRV and when Cherie and I started, it took us probably a month to get everything dialed in right to get our first responses. But it's almost like a spiritual wiretap. I mean, there's times we turn it on and they're talking back and forth, but they are not talking to us. They're talking to each other. Mm-hmm. And you can just sit there and listen, although eventually they do figure out you can hear them. But I remember some of the first responses that we got, the spirits were saying, he can hear us. Oh my gosh, he can hear us. And I said, yeah, I can hear you. See? I mean, they were literally, you could hear how surprised they were, how excited they sounded. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's kind of like a wiretap.
I think it was interesting, too, that he was double checking with someone to make sure his math was right.
Well, I mean, it also shows his sense of humor, his ability to respond. He's like, was that the wrong answer? You know?
Right.
Just, it's incredible.
So another clip we have here is called Energy of the Mind. So you were talking about how we hear them. And so do you want me to play this first or do you want to talk about it?
I'll just explain it real quick. So one of the, and anybody who's done EVP work knows that when you're asking the question, there are many times that the response shows up on the recorder before you're even done asking the question. You may only be halfway through the question, but the response shows up. So we always wanted to know, okay, if you are energy, frequency, and vibration now as consciousness or spirit, you don't have ears. I'm speaking and producing physical sound waves that you don't have the apparatus to interpret. Just like radio waves are flowing by us right now, but unless you have the instrument of a radio to decipher it, you don't hear what's in those radio waves. So my question to them was, because when I ask questions, there's no mic, there's no broadcast. I'm just speaking, just as if I was speaking to my wife. So my question was, when I speak, how do you hear me? And this is the response they gave.
How do you hear me speak?
So there's your answer. They're not hearing me speak. They're picking up on what I'm thinking, which would explain then why you can get an answer on a recorder before you even finish asking the question.
Wow. The compelling piece of that for me is that we call it. That means there's more than one person in there in communication with each other.
Right.
Some conscious grouping that's happening.
Right. Or a universal consciousness. Right. Yeah. It just depends on what your outlook is, what you believe reality is or is not. And so, there's a million variable paths to go down on that subject matter, but you're absolutely right.
Wow. It's just, I'm sitting here in awe. And I've listened to these clips several times today, and every time it's like, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. And, we are very excited about what the future of it is. Half the questions I was saying, what are the limitations? Where does it stop being able to do this, or does it? We don't know. We don't know.
So the next one that I've got is Let's Touch Tony. I feel like
this is back again at the Montgomery house. I was sitting on a chair with a room behind me, and apparently they wanted to reach out and touch someone, but it was funny because I remember feeling like something rushed up behind me right after this, because I heard them, or right before it. I can't remember which one, but yeah, here's what they said.
Can you stop talking and let spirits that are in this house answer our questions? They're trying. Okay, Keep going, please, because I can hear it blessing. That was a yes. It sounded like.
Again, using my name. And like I said, again, broadband white noise. No audible data exists in broadband white noise at all. There shouldn't be sounds, warbles, artifacts that sound like speech. There should be nothing. But yet, intelligent answers with timing and relevance to the questions that we're asking. So it's phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I just can't, the sentence structure alone is in the content, the tone, the relevance to the moment. It is all just, it's wow. And I go back to the wow factor, it's still wow. So I'm saying it's still, I don't think it's going to stop for me either every time.
Thank you. We appreciate that. The one struggle that we haven't solved yet is that we'll still get pushback saying, oh, you think you're hearing it. It's warbles and artifacts of sound. But we do what's called TDSI, or the Digital Seance Initiative. Ron and Lourdes do it on the East Coast. Cherie and I do it on the West Coast, where you've got 20, 30 people in the audience, and they will all agree on what they heard. You're not going to get that from random warbles or artifacts, that kind of agreement. Occasionally there might be the first word that they said, oh, I think he said he, or I think they said she. But either way, it doesn't change the fact that you both heard it. You identified them as words and human speech. So, saying that one word may have been off, well, that happens in daily life. Somebody may hear something differently, but it doesn't mean that speech did not occur.
Yeah. Going back to when Ron was doing the Facebook Live sessions right around Christmas, it was amazing how many people would be typing the same comment of what they heard, and how like all of a sudden you would have 4 that were saying the same, they heard the same thing.
Right. And that helps us show its validity, because, there's a ton of EVP clips out on YouTube and TikTok and every channel. And, they'll put the words up and you're like, wait, what? And people will say that to us. Hey, Anthony, people will say that to us, why do you put what you heard? We don't. And they're like, well, I get influenced then. And I think I'm hearing that. There is some truth to that, but human hearing's not that valuable, because we tested it. We put out a bunch of them, put completely something that wasn't even there, and people said, I don't hear that. I don't hear that.
Right.
Can it influence it? Sure, it can, but it's not to the strength level where someone's going to think they heard something that doesn't exist.
Right. The other interesting point is when you're doing the Facebook Lives, it will auto generate the text for you.
Yep.
And there's so many times where it is picking up words. So how could that voice to text thing be picking up words out of warbles and
it couldn't. That's a great point. And we did an upgrade to Staticom. We now call it Staticom 2.0. We did that. I think I finalized it 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago. And that speech to text, when we run it through that, or Otter, or any of the other speech to text, it has improved significantly. We'll get 50-60% of the words coming up. So that was a big plus as well.
I'm looking forward to you guys figuring out how to run that through Facebook and do some live sessions. Hopefully not too often, because I stay up way too late while listening to them.
We have the ability to run it through OBS, but we can only put it to one channel. When we made the upgrades, Ron had to upgrade his computer system long before I did. But when I made the changes, added components, reconfigured it, trying to increase the clarity of the speech, my laptop couldn't handle it. So we had to go out and buy brand new top of the line processors. I think mine's got 32 or 64 gigabyte of RAM just to make this thing run smoothly. And so our problem is that anybody who says, hey, can we do a live? We're still struggling with that because the processor's so heavy and used to run it that if you have to connect to a live stream, even if you're not the one hosting it, still the connection can cause us issues. So we're working on ways around that.
It's almost like you need a second machine to do your live stream.
Yeah.
Which we've tried that too, but then we get the problem of echo, which is even worse. So
yeah. Wow.
Before we get too far off going back to this last point, we all have recorders when we're in the field, and we don't have the luxury of having Staticom. So bear with me. We're doing this old school still. So we've got voice recorders. Some are better than others, of course, quality brand, things like that. But, the rarity of capturing a Class A EVP comes into this, and when you do get it, of course, it's like, the moment, but, they're B's and C's and mostly C's, let's be honest. There's something there. I'm not 100% sure. What I want to say to this is you're capturing Class A EVPs every time if we're going to go in that scale. And
you're right.
That alone to me is that is the difference, the mass difference of how much stuff are we as investigators out there doing the good work that we're all trying to do. How much are we really missing? That is literally right at us. And when you said the radio waves are all around us, it made me think of it. Like there's stuff everywhere. This, and man, it's just that blows my mind as well. Like
it is, and to have responses so clear that it's literally like talking on the telephone. I mean, this is probably one of the goals to this was to finish Edison's thought to create something that was as close to a phone to the dead as physically possible. We're getting there. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, the progress has been phenomenal and we're super happy with it. But none of the 4 people on the team, we're never happy. We always want to push it that extra step further. And we will continue to do that, like I said, probably for a lifetime. But you are correct. This type of communication where you're not guessing at what was said, you're not fighting the static sounds, the crackles, the fluctuation in the radio signal, making pops, crackles, squeals. None of that's there. So it's a whole nother path.
Mm-hmm.
So in that spirit, then, and pun intended for saying spirit, I guess. But when I get a poor EVP, I'm more apt to discard it, or because I can't clean it. I can't get enough to make it be better than it is. Do you get to that point as well with what you're capturing in Staticom? Is there evidence that's just not enough to say this is really something? How often does that happen in the mix?
Yeah, I mean that's a correct. Like I said, it's 2.0 is clearer than Staticom, the original Staticom. But are we always trying to improve? And do we show everything? Only when running a live, and I'm sure you've seen Ron do it. I've done it. We'll run for 45 minutes, and then we're up to doing it. Ron's done 2.5, 3 hours, I think. So you can hear stuff in there that you can't make out. Now, this 2.0 is much clearer, but we will always continue to enhance that, because when we can now hear not only whether it's male or female, we can hear emotion, we can hear accents, we can hear that can happen on EVP, but that's rare as well to be able to truly get all that simultaneously. Whereas Staticom, you can continue to ask questions. You can tell it's the same voice answering. I think Ron and Lourdes had a 1:07 full conversation where this gentleman was speaking, and for 1:07, he just kept talking. And it's a great clip. And then when we first started, and having built spirit boxes for 12, 13 years, I would take those out to the field, turn them on, And it was me going, are there any spirits here? Do you want to communicate? What was life like? You know, what about this bill? But it was me asking question after question after question until we went to direct radio voice, which is now Staticom today. But I remember having everything set. I turned it on. They started asking me questions. I was answering them, which just blew my mind.
I think that's the coolest part of this, is that it's a communication. It's two ways. It's giving and taking both directions, and it's pretty amazing. So
correct.
We do have a couple more clips. Then the next one I have queued up is "Say Hi to Ron."
Okay.
Did you just go ahead and run it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is Ron running Staticom right now? He is? Can you say to Ron, can you say Tony says hello?
I mean, talk about the exchange of information. And we've not Staticom 2.0, but the original Staticom. Staticom produces vocals consistently and better with 2.0. We've always had stuff we know, speech, but not quite discernible enough. Correct, Ron. The only thing we always get 100% clear is the word Rathman. That does come through often, but he's absolutely correct. But one of the things we noticed was that, you know, people just last night, I think on our EVP show, someone asked, have you ever tried like some sort of remote viewing to see what they could do? Well, Ron and Lourdes were in New Jersey. Chris and Audra were in just outside Charlotte, North Carolina, and Cherie and I were in Phoenix. Chris and Audra in North Carolina, Chris wrote a word on a piece of paper, didn't say it, didn't tell anybody. Ron in New Jersey said, what word did Chris write on the paper? In a matter of about a second and a half, 2 seconds, they either figured it out, read his thoughts, whatever, answered on the Staticom in New Jersey so we all could hear it, said the word. Chris held the paper up after they said it. Sure enough, said the exact word he wrote, which I believe was zebra.
Wow.
But that communication, when I said, hey, is Ron running Staticom? And they're like, he is. Well, I asked Ron the next day, I said, hey, 9 o'clock my time, 11 o'clock your time, were you running Staticom? He said, yeah, we were.
And if I remember correctly, there's been a couple times where you've had some of that back and forth. Like he's gotten messages and didn't know that you were running it at all. And it's
correct. He's asked, knowing I was doing a live Staticom session, he asked, how many people does he have in his audience? We did the session. I didn't speak to him that night. I'd get a message from him in the morning, goes, you had X amount of people. I'm like, how do you know that? Well, because they answered.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's just the fact that time and space doesn't matter. It's like that whole, it's
correct.
It's instant. It's there. They're everywhere.
They are everywhere, which is, exciting from a research standpoint, a little unnerving when you think about it, because I mean, literally, they are there all the time.
Just a little,
yeah, just a little.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also fascinating, and that's why we keep plugging away, keep trying to improve it, keep trying to see what else we can do. But so far, we're just as impressed with it as anyone who's heard it for the first time. Because I don't know, it's a whole new level. Mm-hmm. Now, don't get me wrong, spirit boxes work. I built them for 12 years, but we believe that there was a kind of a disenrailment of the theory of spirit communication. I mean, DRV was out long before Frank Sumption put out the Frank's box. Mm-hmm. And what he had worked. I mean, you can get a word or two, maybe partial sentence, but the consistency of the answer is not there. And we realize that the radio signals aren't needed. You don't need to scan up a radio station or down speed. None of that's necessary. In fact, we've determined, and again, this is based on our own research, but that when it hits a radio station and says a word or part of a commercial or whatever it hits, that blocks the communication. Mm-hmm. They only use the fragments of white noise in between that scanning to communicate. That's why we believe their answers are short, brief, and because that's all they can get out in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm. I've thought about this a little bit. I'm wondering if it was the Frank's box, the scanning radio. It was an easier piece of equipment to carry around. Like,
no doubt about it. And
it developed that way because it was something that everybody could grab and go do.
You are absolutely correct. And let's face it, you flipped one switch to turn it on, you could start asking questions. You may adjust some of the other buttons. You may adjust the echo, the reverb, whatever else was. But that's the other nice thing about Staticom. None of that exists. There's no echo. There's no reverb. There's no alteration of the voice in any way, shape, or form. So what you're getting is natural. But your point is extremely valid, because somebody that wants to jump right into what can I get, spirit boxes were good for that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to set you up on this one. We have one last clip, but what do you think the spirits think of this whole idea?
They like it. They love the fact. I mean, we've heard them say, I don't know how many hundreds of times, we love this, or I don't want to say what I was about to say because I think it's in this clip, but the fact that they know that communication to an extent that has not yet been seen as possible. I mean, think about if you were a spirit or consciousness or whatever term you want to call it. On the other side, you could see your loved ones. You could know they weren't happy, but you had no ability to interact or communicate on a regular basis. Staticom gives that ability. And so that's why people always say, well, how many voices are talking? When we first got this working, we had to figure out how to limit it, because it was overpowering. They were all trying to speak at once and screaming over each other. And so, yeah, we had to determine, frequency and change shifts and all sorts of other things. But yeah, that ability, and it works through spirit boxes and other devices. So that ability is there, just not to this extent.
Okay. All right. So let me go ahead and run this then.
All right. Let me hear you say Rathman.
How about now, spirits? Can you say Staticom?
You ask some questions. You can sit here. Let's see if there's any difference between me asking and you asking. I'll be right back. It's not live or anything.
But you're...
That one's just interesting because, well, clearly you heard him say we love these tests, but they said stand up just before I stood up.
Right.
So again, it's that I didn't say I was going to stand up, but they were able to pick up, and I did. I got up. My wife took my spot to take over. But it just shows the ability of how that information is being passed back and forth.
Tony, I want to go back, way back in time for you. And I want you to think about that first time you went on an investigation. Okay. And I'm going to assume you were skeptical.
Oh, yeah.
I think you said as much. So, and that to me, honestly, that's, I can remember my first time too. So, bear with me on that. But, one of the things that I love, absolutely love, is when we get to do public investigations and there's the big tough dude who's there because his girlfriend, wife, whatever connection is, made him come along.
Right.
And all of this is BS, and that's all staged and fake, and and the lights go down, the session starts, there's equipment all over the place, and it doesn't matter what it is, a K2, a REM pod, something starts to happen, a flashlight pops, something happens. And there's direct reason for it because of a call response situation.
Right.
And that dude starts to go, whoa, and by the time the thing, we're done a couple hours later, they're not the same person they were when they started. I can only imagine what that experience would be like if Staticom was available. Like, think about that. If you had that on your first time out, wow.
Absolutely. One of the greatest benefits that we have found by sharing what Staticom can do, and people always say, "Oh, did you patent this? Why aren't you selling it?" Even if we were, which we're not, that's not the greatest reward. The greatest reward is when somebody in an audience asks a question and gets a response from a voice they recognize, a voice they can identify, and literally touches them to the point where it changes their life. That, I know for Sheree and I know for Ron and Lourdes, is something that you just cannot replace, you cannot take away, and you'll never forget. And that, we love that.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Justin has a question here that I'm going to throw up.
Yeah.
I don't know that we've, let me think about it for a minute. I don't know that we've specifically run a test saying, okay, tell me what I'm thinking. Could it be done? Absolutely. But again, that list of what can be done is so long. But we know that they can only by other examples of clips that we've done, and something's popped up and we're like, okay, there's no way they could have known that. They answered it before it was done, or like me standing up. He says, stand up. And I did right after. It's a theory that that's how it's being passed on. But the fact that I literally said, how do you hear me speak? We call it death, energy of the mind. That's the thing. When you look at principles of physics, when you look at Nikola Tesla, who said, if you want to understand the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. When you think in terms of what a spirit may be or what consciousness may be, energy, frequency, and vibration. And guess what? Guess what white noise is? Energy, frequency, and vibration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it all comes together.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah, I'm at a point where I've just taken in so much information that I don't.
I have two questions I'd like to ask you.
Sure.
I'm going to kind of throw a general blanket over this, so bear with me. But
okay.
in your opinion, and we kind of touched on some of this, maybe it's answered already, but I'd like to hear your thought. What would you say are the most common misconceptions associated to or around ITC in general?
The most common misconceptions revolve around multiple different factors. The first one being that if you have any communication at all, you're dealing with demons. You're going to get possessed. Your life is over, and you better fix it immediately and go see a priest. We've been communicating through spirit boxes, DRV, and now Staticom for about 14 years. That's misconception one. The other misconception is the flip side of it. That's, academia or scientists say you're believing that you're hearing what you want to hear. That may have been the case with beginning spirit boxes, where you could barely understand what they were saying between the static, the white noise, and all the other disruptions. Staticom's not like that. It's clear. So that misconception, even when we talk about what Staticom can do to somebody who's never seen it, never personally heard it, and there's a huge difference too between personally experience it in a live environment to watching a clip. The impact of it is 3 times what you get from watching a clip. But that other aspect is that, that disbelief, which is so ingrained in either a cultural aspect or a religious aspect or a scientific aspect that they won't even touch it. Oh, that's warbles and artifacts. You just think you're hearing this. No, I don't think. If I think these 20 other people think they heard it too, so who's wrong and how is that happening? And so, one of the things we're excited about is to really bring this method to light and let people question it, let people throw out what they think, because we've gone through this up and down, over and over, back and forth, left and right. Do we know exactly how it's happening? No, we don't. But we do know that we don't have anything in it that's an easy, low-hanging piece of fruit to go, you're getting radio waves. Can't. We have no radio. We have no device that can pick up radio, satellite, walkie-talkie, nothing.
All right, second question then, and then building upon it. So, and obviously you're not going to get the winning lottery ticket numbers.
Nope.
So,
we tried.
So given the pie in the sky, if anything could be possible, where do you see the Staticom project in, say, 5 years from now? What do you
Hopefully see? In the hands of everybody interested in the paranormal, wanting to see what they can catch, what communication they can have, what answers they get when they ask questions. That for sure. But there's so many positives about where this could go. I hate to elaborate too far because, like I said, we don't know the limitations of it yet. Right. But could it be used? I mean, anybody who claims to have had extraterrestrial contact always say they were speaking to me. I heard them, but their mouth never moved. Okay. Is that a form of telepathy? Could Staticom easily pick that up? We've even had people say to us, do you think Bigfoot could communicate through this? I don't know. We don't have those answers yet. Is it possible? It could be. But then there's other sides to it we have to keep in mind, is that because it has the ability to give us information, either A, we're not aware of, B, we don't know, C, we're not 100% sure where it's coming from, also opens up the door of what organizations would love to get a hold of this. And I'm sure you can think exactly who I'm thinking, but that's another thought we always got to keep in mind.
I can only imagine they're not already on the radar there. So
yeah,
at least one of those agencies or organizations, entities, whatever we want to call them, to be not on our radar ourselves. Right. Chad and I can't go to jail.
You're too pretty for jail, Jamie.
Too pretty for jail. It's funny. I said that comment at the end of our sessions, our public sessions. I always advise people. I tell people, congratulations, now you're officially a paranormal investigator, and I joke that their certificates in the mail, because. But then I do advise them, you can go out on your own and do, investigate places, but make sure that you tell people where you're going and you're allowed to be there. And it's the first time I ever said this, and I did it as a joke, but you're all too pretty for jail. And people argued with each other that one of their group wasn't. So,
but you're absolutely right. Permission is the absolute probably most important, on top of safety, not being alone. But unfortunately, we have those people within the community that don't pay attention to that stuff, and it gives a bad name to everybody in it.
It does, and that's that's the reputation piece alone. We are struggling I'll call credibility, but that's probably not the right way to say it. But for to be acknowledged, as a pseudoscience, maybe even a real science. Obviously, I think you're supporting science more than anything. And the things that we do negative, that draw it down. And it doesn't have to be the trespassing piece or,
right.
the physical thing like that. But the false documentation of evidence, the staging of things, the stuff that does happen. It hurts. It's frustrating, and it puts the good light that we're all trying to project. It puts a filter on it, and it automatically puts a huge filter. It gives someone an excuse to say it's not real.
Well, exactly. And the more poorly put together stuff that's out there. I mean, researching the paranormal, trying to explain it, try to understand what's occurring is hard enough to do because of the doubt of, what are you doing? You're crazy. None of that exists. But yeah, when poor stuff is shown as an example, that reinforces that ability that, that's what do they think they're doing? And that makes it even harder. So you're right. That whole reputation, that whole ability to take a look at what you captured, know your environmental surroundings. What was going on when it was captured? Was there a dog barking outside, or was there, you got to be aware of all of that. Then you have to review, let other people review, let them question it or ask questions to make sure you covered all your bases before you say, this is unexplained. Tell me what you think. And then, okay. But a lot of that's not done. Oh, look what I caught. People are like, wait, that big red circle in the middle? I don't know what you're what you're showing me.
Yeah.
Well, we equate this to the difference between being a ghost hunter and a paranormal investigator. The ghost hunter is chasing shadows, and everything's a ghost. And the investigator is going to take away all the normal things, and then whatever is left could be paranormal, but you're still skeptical of that until you can really knock it down. And there is that night and day difference, and you see it.
Correct.
And that's we try to teach that in what we do with the public, and I hope others do as well. And I'm assuming others do.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the difference to at least to me, and I think for our team, that is the hugest difference between the credibility and the non-credibility.
Right.
Completely. You lose no one listens anymore.
Right. And thank you, Ron. Sheree and I do appreciate it. I noticed Ron said that, and I didn't mention this, but yeah, we don't believe that they read our minds. We believe because we're connected to a universal consciousness that they can access it. And that's the same thing we were talking about prior when you said, talking about giving our names, and that we had done it. Mm-hmm. And then we go to places we had never stepped foot in, and they'd be like, hey, the Rathmans are here. It's Tony and Sheree. That wouldn't physically be possible if some type of universal consciousness didn't exist that was being shared.
Right.
So good point, Ron.
This comment ties to that as well.
I believe our thinking and thoughts get put out there into the universe, and some of the information is we're not absolutely, Lourdes. Absolutely agree. I agree. Yeah. Well, and the other point is, and Ron always says, we don't know where these spirits are at because timing doesn't exist. Timing is the lineal timeline is a human construct. Distance doesn't exist. They can be anywhere at any time. But if that information, when we were asking a question and they were who knows where or how far away, and then had to get it back to the machine, which literally interprets it so our physical 5 human senses can understand it and pick it up, that would have to be superluminal contact, faster than the speed of light, to happen at the rate at which it's happening with Staticom. But to Ron and Lourdes's point about it being a collective consciousness, it doesn't have to travel anywhere because it's right here. It is knowledge that all of them have access to. And so that one can answer that may not even have thought about it or experienced it, but has access to the information and can deliver that message instantly. Why is it so important to catch evidence? What I'm saying is, why do we such fighting over pics and clarity explained to not be, but some will fight like it's the end of the world? Why? Andy, that's a little thing called ego. And unfortunately, that is one of the biggest hurdles and obstacles within the paranormal community today.
I think there's more to that though too, and it's the you want to be the one that presents the evidence, and that falls in their ego, but it's validation. All the time that we spend in the dark hours of the night, away from the friends and family, the ones we love, leaving something behind to go out and do this work, and again, most of it's done at night. I think we crave that to some degree, to be validated that our work has progress to it. There's something that we're really doing it for. Because if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, and no changes, and you keep getting the same results, you're going to bore, you're going to burn a bit, burn out or get tired of it, and then you slide away. We want that, and it's. I think that's I think it's a healthy drive to want to find more things. I think that's what drives Staticom to get to Staticom 2, and to get away from the early iterations, and that's no different for any advancement in the field. We have a team of 10 individuals, and not everybody can make every event that we do.
Right.
Right. So, and we know that. So, people come and go, but the whole of us, are still connected that way. Because we want to do this, and people stay for that. We're privileged, and I'm never going to shy from that to say, we have a location that we get to go to on a regular basis. That we know where it is, we know what's going to, we know what to expect to some degree. We never know what's going to happen, but we know what to expect when we arrive. We're not going to some strange place where it's down the beaten path, and you don't know the shape of the place, who might be there, and that's the risk, right? Of going out into the wild of a place that you've never been to. There could be real people there, and that's danger,
Right. Correct.
So we have that great advantage of having all that to collect and continue to collect that place, of evidence. But we still go back, even though we probably know who's there. We have a good grasp of who's there. We have a good idea of what's going to happen to some degree because of the relation of the space that we do.
Correct.
But, the fact that something really cool can happen, and we're lucky enough to have a camera up or an audio on or something, it's a huge bonus. But
exactly. And what the other thing, the other aspect to what Andy asked about, why is it so important to collect the evidence? To me, it's important for two reasons. One, so that it can be shared and experienced, verified or debunked by everyone else in the paranormal community. And it adds to the knowledge database of what was captured. Maybe somebody else at the same location captured it too, and it may bounce back and forth to verify both captures or debunk them, whatever way you want to look at it. But otherwise, without some sort of capture to be able to reproduce to other people, it's the fishing story of the big one that got away and broke your rod into 4 pieces, and it was this big.
Mm-hmm.
If you have video, audio, something that can be replayed, it adds validation to the story behind it. And especially with something like the paranormal, which today materialistic science says, well, we can't study it because we can't capture it, we can't measure it, we can't reproduce it. Even though pieces of information may come from 100,000 groups across the country or the world, each piece is a puzzle piece that, if you put them together, paints a bigger picture, because there are consistencies of how they got captured, it, where it came from, and those pieces start to paint a picture of maybe variables of what that other side looks like.
Yeah. And Andy, that's a great question. But before we slide away from it, thank you. I really appreciate the question.
You bet. Without prior evidence from DRV in Europe being recorded, there would be no Staticom. Today's records are tomorrow's foundation. Yeah. Well said, Ron, and absolutely true. Mm-hmm. Absolutely true.
And Todd here has another comment.
Staticom, in my opinion, has brought together many of us in the paranormal community who are all searching for the same answers. As more and more people become aware of Staticom, hopefully it will continue to unify us. And that's another aspect that we probably didn't foresee coming. But if that is the case and can happen, absolutely wonderful. Because back to what Jamie was saying, that everybody wants to be the one to say, look what I got, look what I captured. When that unity breaks down, mankind has been trying to figure out what life after death is for thousands of years. No single person is going to do it on their own. No. We may have a chance with everybody testing, trying new things, but it'll never happen from one individual. I agree about sharing to peers, but the fighting is horrible. Andy, I completely agree. Again, there's no sense in it. There's no productivity in it. There's nothing reached from two people fighting over evidence. It should be shared. It should be, acknowledged by the paranormal community as a whole, saying, yep, that's nice catch, regardless of who caught it. But fighting over it, that defeats the purpose of making any progress in the paranormal field.
Yeah. And this has to be noted as well. Ron, it's true. Don't deny.
Wow. So
I got one more question. I got one more. I know we're way long.
No, you're fine, Jamie.
And it's past Chad's bedtime. So I got one last question for me,
sure.
At least. So you're a paranormal investigator.
Correct.
Okay. So if you go out to the field and you don't have Staticom available, what's your go-to instrument? What's your thing?
My answer would have been, if I didn't have Staticom, probably recorder first and foremost. Like I said, the amount of information that can come through on a single EVP, again, you can tell if it's male or female. You can tell if it's adult or a child. You can tell if there's an accent or a dialogue. You can tell emotional state based on how they're expressing what they're saying. So a vocal response to me, which has timing and relevance to it, regardless whether Staticom we're talking about that or not, you can't beat that. No REM pod with a flashing light or a flashing light from this direction is going to give me that kind of information. So it would be a digital recorder.
Okay.
Cool.
But today it would be Staticom, no doubt.
Right. One thing I wanted to bring up that goes back to one of the shows that I watched a while ago, is that you were actually getting communication. I can't remember the whole thing, but it was like you were hearing communication through your cameras or something. I wish I could remember the whole thing, but it's like the voices were coming through. Now I'm drawing a complete blank on it, but it's like there was the Staticom is always there. It's like you weren't running Staticom, but there was something else with a white noise, and you were hearing it through that.
I think you're talking about when we investigated the Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City, Philippines. It was pouring out, and they had these things in the walls where the water would literally run down the wall into a trough and then flow out of the building. Well, it created basically a white noise background. Cherie and I were the only two people in the entire building, yet we could hear them speak to us with our own ears. In fact, we have a clip where Cherie asked about 5 questions in a row, and you can hear every answer after her question. And we could hear it with our own ears. So that might be what you're referring to.
I think, yeah, that sounds right. the experiences that are out there to be had, huh, Jamie?
Well, first of all, what kind of drainage system is this? What? What?
Well,
it was super. It's an old building. I mean, it was built by nuns and priests prior to World War II. General Yamashita actually came in, beheaded the priests and the nuns that were in there, and took the building over. So it's got a really dark history on top of strange water removal.
But I mean, you have to think these places get monsoons and they have lots of water.
I know, and
it's just like, so it's pretty, but it's pretty amazing. So
it was, and it's funny because people say, well, like that Phelps Dodge where I said, if you're here, say hi, and then I heard that hi. Well, the whole point to how Staticom is built is that white noise exists naturally in the environment. So could the process we're using for Staticom literally be the same process where there's a background white noise sound that they can place vocal energy or whatever, however you want to define it, on top of that to make it audible to our human ears? And the answer from a physics standpoint is yes.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. Wow. I may have said "wow" tonight more than I have in like the last forever. Well, since Ron and Lourdes were on, so
and the team of the four of us has just been absolutely fantastic. We think the world of them and our entire EVPI team. But working with Ron and Lourdes to develop Staticom has been just an absolute pleasure for Cherie and I, with the background of audio and spirit box building and everything. But we couldn't ask for a better arrangement. They're super people, and it's developing great, and I can't wait to see where it is in another 6 months or year, or who knows what we can make it to by then, but we'll see.
Well, next time you get to the East Coast, definitely would love to get together and talk. It's
awesome, Dad. Absolutely.
Well, we used to have a license plate that said "You've got a friend in Pennsylvania."
There you go. You know what? We actually may be in Pennsylvania this year. Don't know for a fact yet, but it is a possibility. So if that happens, I'll shoot you a message and be like, "Hey, we're going to be in Pennsylvania."
Sounds good.
Sure. Make it work.
Awesome. So do you think if we took old tube TV with white noise, we get the same result? Yeah, absolutely you would. It can be done with any white noise at all, from a radio, from a television, broadband radio. It doesn't matter necessarily what hertz, whether you're using long band, short band, medium band. It can be done. Like I said, I stuck mics out the car door, taped them to the car, drove around. Mm-hmm. I could get voices from that white noise sound. So yeah, you can.
And with the old tube TV too, you never know what you might get through the static on the picture tube too.
Right.
I mean,
correct.
So I think it's a great experiment. So
yeah.
And I think it's funny that the three of us, and then Andy bringing up a tube TV, people who know what these things are still. First of all, we're all a certain age now. We should probably go get some screening done.
Right.
But
thank you, Ron. Do I sense wrath? It's possible, Todd. It just we have to check our schedule because we've got things popping up left and right, but. It may be a possibility.
So, well, I know it's getting late. I'd love to play this shadow clip one more time.
Go ahead.
Jamie, I know you haven't seen it before, Jamie, so I'm playing it for you. So here's this.
it just hit me. They're walking through that door. Duh.
Yeah.
Not one door into another.
Yeah. The first person looks like they're leaning back in and talking to somebody, and coming out and like jotting something down, or it is so distinct. It's
Yeah.
No, I see
you're absolutely right. There's a door at the end of the hall on both sides, and they came out of this one, then went back in. Then two of them went out across the hall into the other room.
Yeah. So that is such a great capture. So
thank you.
So you do your shameless plugs. We like to do the same sort of thing.
All right.
Here,
anybody looking for more information on either the last 13 years of paranormal investigation or Staticom, you can go to YouTube, look up Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations. You can go to YouTube, type in Staticom. It'll take you to Ron, Lourdes, Cherie, and I's page. You can go to entityvoices.com. There is a Staticom tab. Or you can go to Tony Rathman Facebook, which uses a combination of everything on all four of the sites I just mentioned. And then the other one is, of course, Ron and Lourdes, GagnaCParanormal.com. He's got a site up that includes clips and all sorts of other things. And he's also got a YouTube channel as well. So there's plenty of information out there and other available things to watch on what Staticom can do.
Okay. So Ron said that we're supposed to ask you where the public can see that clip soon.
Thank you, Ron. And I think I said this before we started the show.
You did, yep.
But the clip I played, and thank you to Ron for getting this to happen. But Ron and Lourdes always do demonstrations at the Pine Bush UFO and Paranormal Museum in New York. And that clip you just watched will actually be displayed in that museum. I think Ron said they already have it, so I don't know how long it'll be before it shows up. So yeah, if you're ever in that area and end up in that museum, you will see the clip you just saw.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
All right. Well, we're going to cover what's coming up for our group. We've got some investigations coming up. March 30th, April 13th. March 30th, I think we're down to like 12 seats left. So if you're interested in the brewery, check it out. May 11th, if you're in the East Coast, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area, it is an opportunity to see Staticom in action. Ron and Lourdes will be at the Red Mill with us again. They were there last year. It's where I got to meet them and just my first time my mind was blown away. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So then we've got some other options through the June there. And then coming up on our show next week, Jamie, Fort Mifflin, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's getting the episode is being built as we speak, but it's getting bigger and bigger. So with a lot of great history in a really accessible location. If you're in the same area that the Red Mill and so forth is, it's just right outside of Philadelphia, right by the airport. So
okay,
more to come.
And then I'm going to dig into telekinesis. Jamie's going to dig into doppelgangers. Then I'm going to do another one of our local ones, the Rockford Plantation. So I'm interested in that. And then April 9th, Jamie's going to be away, but I'm going to have a special guest co-host, Mr. Steve Dills, and we're going to talk about the Hanover Tavern. So that'll be an interesting one.
Not a bad fill-in. Okay, I'll admit it. So it just remember he's a fill-in. That's a one-time thing.
So, and he actually may bring a guest along. I got to run that up the flagpole, but he may bring a guest along from his team. So we'll
very
see.
Cool.
Then you can find Jott-Nyx on the social medias that we always talk about.
Yep.
So yeah. Tony, I want to thank you for a great show. Like my mind is completely mush now, but that's a good thing.
Well, I want to thank you both for having Ron and Lourdes on, having me on, be able to further explain, what this new methodology can do. And if this show caught your interest, keep an eye on Staticom. You'll see it popping up, whether it be in physical locations to be demonstrated live. But there's plenty of information out there and much more to come.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's going to be another episode with you or Ron, or you and Ron together. Maybe at some point you'll be able to do a live one that we can do at least a short set. Who knows? The opportunities are endless. So
it will happen and will be available. Like I said, we're working through the issues of what the actual computer needs to run it versus what we need to do to be able to run a live as well. But we will figure it out. I have no doubt about that. And it shouldn't be all that long. We we got a couple of ideas to make it work, and as soon as we can. Yeah, we have a list of people saying, can we do a live show with it? Can we do a live show? Because we've done it in the past. Just the upgrade really was much higher on the processor use. So
of course, but it's an open invitation.
Yep.
Without a live session or without one, it's always an open invitation. So I appreciate it.
If you have something that's earth shattering and groundbreaking, you want to let us know. We'll get an episode on with you. So
awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that very much.
Remember, you have a friend in Pennsylvania. So
I will remember that, even if I have to get a license plate to say it.
So
we'll find you. Don't worry.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you, Tony, Jamie. Thanks for hanging out another week with us. Thanks to everybody who's, I don't know, I'm tired.
This is Chad past his bedtime right now.
I want to thank everybody who joined us and is hanging out with us. So yeah.
If you've not been with us before, please come back again. We don't talk this long usually, but this was an exceptional guest tonight, and again, fantastic work. So
not going to use your e-bike. I'll remember that, Lourdes.
So. All right. Well, I think we're going to run the end credits here, and we'll see you in a little bit, Tony. Don't go anywhere. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Good night.